The WJEC specification asks you to be able to talk about different types of mystical experience. This PowerPoint will go some way to explaining these different typologies. Don't forget that these are looking specifically at different types of mystical experience rather than types of religious experience in general. It is important to notice this because other religious experiences may not be classed as mystical due to the features that mystical experience tends towards. Philosophers find it difficult to agree on the different kinds of mystical experience. All the scholars involved may come up with different typologies. Some are similar and some are wildly different. We will cover some here, and these also feature in the guides that you've been given to you by your tutor. Firstly, R.C. Zehner identifies 3 types of mystical experience. The first is panhenic mysticism, and it seems to allow the mystic to feel at one with all nature and the totality of existence. Panhenic means all in one. Secondly, monistic mysticism is where the mystic feels the oneness of his or her soul. And thirdly, theistic mysticism is more about union with a personal God. It will be theistic mysticism that we exemplify later. Other scholars have spoken about Kataphatic and Apophatic mysticism. Kataphatic mysticism makes positive claims about what the mystic experiences. They may use analogies to speak of God and the sensations in mystical experiences. God might be described as a light or as a father, not because it's supposed to be taken literally, but because it helps the hearer to understand the feelings or sensations that are experienced. This is sometimes known as the via positiva or kataphatic way. In contrast, apophatic mysticism claims that it is impossible to speak of objects or states that are experienced by the mystic. These experiences are indescribable or ineffable. The mystic instead may use negative language to attempt to demonstrate what the experience is not or what God is not as a method to communicate understanding. For instance, God is immortal, invisible, transcendent, intangible. This is known as the via negativa. God is not mortal, not invisible. Not mortal, not visible, and so on. Christian tradition has a long history of using both of these approaches. The next scholar is W.T. Stace, and he divides mysticism into 2 different types again. He sees mysticism as being either extrovertive or introvertive. Extrovertive mysticism looks outwards at the external world in order to discover God. This is a bit like Kataphatic mysticism. It looks out into the universe and gains divine knowledge through such an experience. Stace sees this as a path to the introvertive way. In contrast, this introvertive way gains this knowledge by looking inwards. God may be found from within the self. Stace feels that this way is more important and notices that it's common across cultures and religions, so that equally the Hindu, Muslim and Christian mystics all report these states. Finally, William James, as mentioned on the specification, is a very famous commentator on religious experience, and he studied them in depth from a psychological perspective. Whilst he never had a mystical experience himself, by studying these phenomena in others he noticed 4 distinct characteristics of mystical experience. Remember these with the acronym PINT. P. Passive. This means that the mystic is not in control of the experience. This is not necessarily a bad thing. They feel that the divine is in control and that he or it is a higher power. Secondly, I, ineffable. It is difficult to describe the experience using ordinary language. It is difficult to get across to the listener what exactly has happened, and as a result they tend to resort to analogy or specifically religious terminology like sacred or grace. Thirdly, N, noetic. Some kind of knowledge has been gained via this experience, not via the usual ways of gaining knowledge, for instance by the senses or by reason. Instead, it's directly knowledge received from this ultimate reality. And fourthly, these experiences are transient. These experiences tend to pass. They can last minutes or hours, but afterwards, whilst a person may be deeply affected, their state returns to normal. It's vital to be able to give examples of these different kinds of mysticism. The next PowerPoint in the series will refer to mysticism of Teresa of Avila. We should apply these characteristics to her mysticism to notice the variety of types of mysticism that she displays from the lists that we have been through.